can see now that I should have brought more slides, but this is what we have. And opposite what you've heard before, this is a short story on me and 80 of my friends spending 3 years doing core research on something, if anything, hyper-focused. And the idea of you and me setting up a meeting is not really anything new. I think I figured it out 2 hours out of college that if you want a job, the way you set up a meeting is that you shoot me an email saying, hey Dennis, can we meet up for coffee when I'm in Manhattan come first week of December? I reply back saying, sure, I'm up for that. What about that Wednesday at 1? You say no, I say 2, you say maybe, I say my office, you shoot the invite, and we've done that 1,000 times, all of us. And it's not that it's hard. Anybody can figure this out. It's just that it's another chore in my inbox that I'd rather see disappear, to put it politely. And it seems also obvious that I didn't have some sort of personal unique epiphany come some morning late 2013 where I woke up and realized that, hey, people fucking hate setting up meetings. We should figure out a solution for that. I think you know that almost immediately. And if you know that immediately, that also means that there's a whole plethora of solutions or clever entrepreneurs before me who tried to solve it. And certainly my biased interpretation of where they might have gone wrong, and from now on don't take anything I say for gospel because I am heavily invested into this venture here. But certainly one for where I think some tasks can be shared, and many tasks should be shared. Say, doing my taxes come end of this year, right? Bring my papers, I cry, she does the paperwork, dry my eyes come the end of it, we submit it, it's a shared task, we do it once a year. But setting up a meeting, though, is really just a set of individual small pinpoints for where, when I receive that email, I have, 100, 120 seconds ahead of me, where I need to figure out, do I just reply back saying, I'm actually in Barbados for December? Or do I say, I think I have the board meeting on December 1st, but you could come by the 2nd. And that work, again, wasn't hard, but it's not one for where I mull over, should I outsource the next 27 seconds to an app and then do the remainder myself? That doesn't really ring true, right? As in, any one of the existing solutions, whether that be some web service, some extension, some plugin, some Tumble.me, some Doodle.me, something, that's not really what you want to do at that moment, right? I received the email from you and I'm thinking, yeah, we should meet up. Pull out my iPhone. Fucking iPhone 10 authentication is shit. So I can't figure out how to really log in. Now I'm logged in. I'm looking at my email. I flip over, open my scheduling app. I pick 3 times. Mull over. Did I actually promise that to somebody else? Oh, forget it. I'll solve that later. Ah, damn it. I need your email. Back. Multitasking is also shit. So I need to kind of double click, flip, copy paste, which is even worse on my phone. Hold down, hold down, hold down, copy. That just doesn't work. The funny thing though is there was already a product in market that worked, which is that if we could all afford it, we would have our own human personal assistant to sit in our front office and manage our calendar. I'm just too frugal, too stupid, too entrepreneurial to spend the 60K in having somebody manage my calendar. So I do what most of us do, right? Sit at home, 10 p.m. in your underwear with a bowl of cereal and work your inbox. And that doesn't really feel like the future to me. Honestly. It feels like something, just not the future. So what we've heard, if you just take a step back, now that you know what I'm trying to solve here, which isn't grand, it's just yet one out of many chores that should be eliminated, is some commentary in general from the usual actors over the last couple of years, really, where it have become more intense, if anything, and you'll see them talk about their personal assistants, whether Cortana, Alexa, what used to be Google Now, which is now Google Assistant, Siri, so on and so forth. And I think those are splendid efforts, and I am sure that they will do well. But I do find it somewhat unrealistic to assume that these assistants will have the answer to any question that I could come up with, or the ability to do any job which I can imagine. That is somewhat suggesting that the human level AI that we've been dreaming of for the last 60 years have arrived, and that is not the case. So given that they cannot answer all my questions, and they cannot do all the jobs which I can imagine, then there probably needs to be some other setting for where startups or other companies can flourish alongside the platforms that you see here. And I think we've seen that before, right? So it's not that the monkeys over at Apple didn't try to somewhat persuade us that this device is going to be magical, because we own not just the hardware, the software, the platform, and the apps, and everything that comes with it, and that full stack. And then what took it? 8 months before they realized that, you know what, we probably can't do all the apps that needs to be installed in that phone, which is why your device is different to mine, even though the hardware is the same. I just have different apps installed. And even as we might argue that they have somewhat unlimited resources, sure, compared to my household budget, I agree, but in the real world, that somewhat infinite set of resources doesn't really measure up against the idea that somehow you need to implement every single app in the world that people can imagine, or certainly the 120 apps you need if you're a Danish-American dude in Manhattan with 2 teenage daughters. You wouldn't even have the imagination to know what apps to engineer. And that's why you have, what is it today, about 2 million apps in the App Store. So if that is the case, and that was not just unrealistic, but something for where they immediately surrendered and envisioned some setting for that there'll be an App Store, then why will this not be the same? Why won't we have some sort of skill store? Which is exactly what Amazon have started. And forget about the somewhat clunky syntax they put in place for the Amazon Echo, and you have to kind of voice it out and say, Alexa, play Eye of the Tiger from Spotify. And that will become more natural, but it's certainly an idea of them assuming that we cannot solve it all, but we can create some setting where people can jump in with high expertise and solve one job. And that setting is certainly one for where, and this is not the best visual, but one for where, in a simple way, you can imagine 2 types of AI exist, some sort of horizontal AI or enabler on the smartphone or device that you would otherwise be in love with, and then a set of highly specialized vertical AIs that can do one job and one job only, but that job extremely well. I'm in the vertical AI space, where we think we can, if we spend enough time on it, engineer this intelligent agent that can set up meetings and only do that. And I think the overlap here and the relationship will be one for where perhaps initially it'll rhyme with, hey Siri, could you have Amy set up a meeting between Dennis and I come the first weeks of December at his office, please? And then it is Siri's job to understand that this is not a skill which I have, but we do have somebody on payroll to do that called Amy. I'll reach out with the data that I receive, give her the job, she'll work on that job for days, sometimes because the guest is lazy, and then come back upon conclusion and say, hey Siri, that job you gave me on Monday, I've solved it. You can now go back to your boss and tell that it's been done. And I think that is the most realistic, certainly, outcome in the short-term future. There'll be a point for where you won't even have to mention the name of the verticalized AI. The enabler will be able to assume who on our payroll can solve that. Now, very specifically, just to put it in perspective, how do we solve this? So we're not an app, and we're not an extension or a plugin or web service, any one of the things that I said before. We exist only as an email, meaning the software conceptually is invisible, meaning that you've all received these requests before, right? And it looks like an email, but look at this, for crying out loud. Hey Michael, good to talk to you yesterday. Do you have time to meet up later today, tomorrow, or perhaps early next week? I am free most days after 1 p.m. That looks like an email, right? That's a fucking riddle. That's not an email. So, or perhaps early next week. Most days after 1 p.m. Now my job is to take your riddle and overlap that on my calendar and somehow figure out when you and I can meet up. That's not what I want to spend my time on. What I do want to spend my time on, if I want to meet this dude, is some setting where in my head, and we almost always know this immediately, do I want to meet up with a guy from SoftBank or not? And I decide that in a split second. And once I've decided, I just need to hand it over. That handover is one where I CC my assistant, where that assistant could be a human, a machine. That doesn't even matter. What matters is that I don't want to do the job, and you do it, Amy. I'd be happy to meet up next week. Please work with Amy, CCs, to get this on the calendar. Looking forward to it. Now, I've done that one kind of magical thing for where there's almost immediate relief. As in, I gave it to somebody else. Like anything at work, right? It's wonderful when you tell your CFO, hey, we should really do a financial model for the year 2017. Off you go. That's 3 weeks of work. But it's nice though, when you hand it over. It's not on your desk anymore, it's on his desk. This is the same. It's just that you do this, at least for me, about 1,000 times a year. And if I can hand that over, I can immediately archive that email as in it doesn't exist in my inbox. You go with it. You spend an hour on it, you spend 2 days, you spend weeks on it, I actually don't care. Just do what I told you to do. Now, that is the easy part, handing it over. The hard part, obviously, is how the hell can we pull that off? Because there is no syntax here. And somehow Amy needs to understand that I was just included into a conversation where somebody which I might work for had a request which I need to understand in full. And remember, many of the stories that you read in the press right now will show some sort of conversation, but it's really a lot of settings where they'll mimic a conversation, and the conversation is in your head. As in, you see one set of text strings with another set of text strings, and you think that's a conversation. But if the machine doesn't understand every single detail, it is not. And we cannot mimic a conversation. I need to understand exactly who are you, what did you ask me to do, who are the participants, what are the constraints, after 1 p.m., what does that mean, most days, how do I clarify that, and what is really the goal of what I've been set out to do here, which is not one to chit-chat. It is one to do what I was told to do. So there's an objective here where I can't just answer the questions. I need to move forward. And then she'll have this very human-like ability to negotiate on my behalf, going back and forth over 2 emails or 11 emails, with all the complexity that arrives when you want a machine to talk to a human. And if you read any of the annotations that we do, I think you'll immediately figure out, as you probably figured out already, that humans are fucking crazy. They say things that are either not true or so ambiguous that even when I look at it, I can barely understand what is it you want me to do here. And that is certainly the challenge. I think we've done well. The outcome of this is something where, just in closing, I'll leave you with not just an advert of me thinking we're awesome, but one for where, what does this mean if these highly verticalized AI agents arrive and do these particular jobs? Then I think there's this setting for where what used to be bring your own device, right, will be this new setting where it'll be bring your own agent. As in, I'll actually be almost disappointed if you and I start to work together and you tell me that you do everything by hand. It will sound eccentric, as in, so you're telling me that I'm paying you 130K and then you set up your own meetings, you do your own receipts, you plan your own travel? Like, I don't think so. Not here. You can go do that eccentric work somewhere else. And that is going to be interesting, because that means when we're going to hire people, we're not going to just hire people on what they can do, but how good they are at selecting which agents to work with, and how good they are at training those agents, and the impact to the work which they do with those agents in hand. That's an exciting future, I think. That was my quick story on what we do. Thank you.